Welcome to I'm Going In, the newest and hottest podcast sharing incredible stories of strength, resilience, and love. This podcast is about that moment when you face trauma or been knocked down and you decide, I'm going in. Whether it's to help yourself stand back up, to strengthen your faith, or to support others, this is where inspiration begins. Like and subscribe to my social channels and get ready to be uplifted as I introduce our next incredible guest on I'm Going In. Hey, welcome back to I'm Going In. I'm your host, Todd Blyleven, and this show is all about having guests coming on to share their stories of strength and adversity, resilience, and the moment that they decided to go in for themselves, go in for others. I'm thrilled to introduce my new guest, Michael Herst. Michael, thank you for being on the show, number one, and I'd love to give an introduction of who you are to our guests so they can understand what we're about to get into. He's a multi-talented podcast host, a producer, a keynote speaker, an author, director, and he's a retired police sergeant. So thank you, sir, for your service, not only to your community, but also our country. You're known for your captivating work on the One More Thing Before You Go podcast. So I'm talking to another podcast host, which is pretty cool. Michael brings a unique perspective, though, from his MA in interdisciplinary studies and BS in business management. He's a devoted family man, an animal advocate, a vegan, and your experience just spans thought-provoking discussions on pop culture to the metaphysical, which I'd love to explore more on here as we get going. But your dedication to explore the depths of human experience and your expertise in engaging conversations, I think, just make you a perfect guest for I'm Going In. But thank you, sir, for being on the show. And there's your warm introduction.
That's a heck of a warm introduction. I really appreciate that. I'm gonna clip that out myself and just play it back and forth. So I remember that.
I will send it to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's start with obviously a lot of guests that I've had on have been in the first responder community, whether it's firefighters, police officers, military. I know you've got a compelling story, and I want you first to, share what you like, what you're comfortable with. But if you can kind of take us back to, where all this began, share some of your story. We're just going to have some cool conversation and really get to the moment where you decided that you were going in for yourself or for others.
Absolutely. First of all, foremost, thank you very much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be able to share my story with your audience and your community because you bring something to this community, to the world, I think that is much needed. So thank you for being here for that purpose.
Thank you, sir.
I am, as you said earlier, I'm a retired police sergeant. I used to start my bio with the fact I'm a police sergeant, and then I'm retired. But I kind of evolved a little more into putting some of the stuff ahead of it because I had to redefine my purpose and find who I was again because of my journey in regard to that. And it's interesting. I'll kind of start at the beginning. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
May of 1999 was one of the hardest days of mine and my family's lives. It was the day that my wife helped me walk out of the FPPA, which is the Fire, Police, and Pension Association in Colorado, where they had a disability retirement hearing for me. And they told me that I was no longer a law enforcement officer. And it was a job that I'd been doing for close to 17 years. Being a law enforcement officer wasn't just a job to me, it was who I am. And I say who I am because I still feel that I belong to this unique first responder community and family of police officers, deputy sheriffs, firefighters, paramedics. And it was a significant jolt that still affects me emotionally to think about it because I was on my way as a sergeant. I loved doing what I was doing. I wanted to be that since I was a kid. I was on my way to be a lieutenant before it was kind of, stopped short, I think. And as you know from the other individuals that you spoke with, it helped define me in numerous ways because we as police officers, we see the worst things in life that has to offer, and we also see people at their worst. And we see the best people at their worst. And typically, if you need a cop, it's either you're a victim or you're a bad guy. So coming from that, you have to really love being a cop. Again, which I did. So when I walked out of there, with my wife's help, which we'll get into, I was kind of hit with what am I going to do now? It was really a jolt to not only us, but to my wife, my family, my kids, my identity. It financially, we took a hit. Emotionally, we took a hit, and the fact that I was told by 5 doctors that I'd be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, I took a hit. I was a street cop. I worked as an investigator. With the unique multi-agency domestic violence task force. I ran a DUI unit. I investigated everything from barking dogs to burglary to robberies, unintended deaths, and homicides. I worked disasters, floods, major snowstorms, anything else Mother Nature decided to throw at us. You know, always wanted to
Wow.
be a police officer since I was a kid.
Mm.
As I said earlier, I loved doing that job, and it was a wake up call.
So let's pause here for a second, Michael, before we start getting into the actual incident. Why did you want to be an officer? What was that driving force growing up? And obviously, becoming an officer is not easy. You don't just go down
No,
and apply like a normal job and they give you a badge and a gun and say, "Here you go. You're a cop now." So why put yourself through all that rigorous, training? But prior to that, what was the kind of inner force that gave you the desire to be an officer?
well, this was my early training into resilience and fortitude. I grew up with a very dysfunctional family, and both my parents were alcoholics. My father actually died when I was 17 years old. He died of cirrhosis of the liver and esophageal cancer that was
Wow.
directly related to alcohol. They had been divorced, back together, divorced, back together. We lost homes. We would come home and have that lock on the door because they didn't pay the bills. It was a very dysfunctional family.
Mm.
So I felt that the best way to be able to come from that, I have an older sister and a younger brother. My older sister left when she was probably 16 years old. She went to live with my grandmother. I was left with my brother to help kind of take care of him. And my father, I hadn't seen him since I was probably 15. This all plays into the factor.
Yeah.
So um, at that 15 years old, I decided, what can I do to give something back to society to help other individuals that are going through the same thing that I'm going through,
Wow.
to help take them out? Because we had had cops that came to the house. We had cops that, I felt were saviors. I mean, it's a big word, but as a kid,
Yeah.
what you see is, you stop the fighting, you stop this, you stop that. You brought peace again to the household for some reason or another. So from that perspective, it gave me the inkling that I wanted to do that job. I wanted to get involved in that. I wanted to be able to bring my skills to helping other people.
I think that's so amazing. And it really gives me chills thinking about, what you went through as a young boy and you're seeing this dysfunction in your home, unfortunately. And I'm sorry you went through that. But those knocks on the door and those men and women coming in wearing the blue, whatever that color of uniform that is, but the badge and just that superhero power of that you're looking up saying, okay, thank God there's some normalcy coming. There's
Mm.
somebody on my side. And then that uplifted you to want to be that other person knocking on those same doors, helping people that have been in that were in your shoes, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one
Wow.
one of the primary factors for me getting involved in running a DUI task force and a domestic multi-agency, joining the multi-agency domestic violence task force,
Wow.
which, not that any domestic violence is good, it isn't, but we worked the worst cases of domestic violence. And it was, again, multi-agency because it wasn't just the jurisdiction I was in. We'd worked as a group in tackling those kind of obstacles. So from my perspective, to culminate part of my career in regard to number one, the DUI task force and arresting, and I have to say, I changed a lot of people's lives. Some people didn't think it was for the better, but obviously I think it was for the better because I think in my career, it's almost 17 years, I must have arrested close to 3,000 people in regard to driving under the influence of alcohol and or drugs. And the same thing with domestic violence. It took a lot of people off the street, put them in jail, took people out of environments that was familiar with. And I was able to get them placed in other areas, including the spouse, the husband, the wife, the boyfriend, the girlfriend. And domestic violence, ran across the board. It wasn't just female being involved in domestic violence. It was also males being in domestic violence. So from many perspectives, it allowed me an opportunity to really kind of culminate my career in a direction that I was able to contribute better to society and be able to, kind of take the bad guy off the street
Yeah.
and, put people in positive environments.
One of my great friends, he was my best man, had a similar role in what you did in law enforcement in a different state. And to hear that perspective from your side it has a lot of synergy to what my buddy Brian talks about, and as a detective and, seeing the things that you see. I've got a nephew that just became a detective in another agency in another state in law enforcement, and the excitement that he has right now to be able to go back and go in for others and to help. But that comes with a cost, right?
It does.
On you mentally and physically and emotionally. So, let's take it now back to the beginning. You're at this courthouse. Back it up. Like what was the cause of you being there? Obviously, this is your story, so I want you to go into it.
Oh, absolutely.
However,
If if I can, please, I would like to say that just as a note to everybody that's in this community of yours and listening, law enforcement officers, I said earlier that we see the worst in the worst, and we see the best people at their worst. It's one of these situations where it does take an emotional toll. I investigated 5 suicides between Christmas Eve and Christmas Day one year. 5. And it's difficult for you to not keep that in your memory. That
yeah,
still affects me to this day.
yeah,
Kind of one of those things that I'm still working through. Part of the PTSD stuff that we'll go into in a little bit. But back to my story in regard to what happened to me. I think it was 1998, somewhere thereabouts. I was, pardon me, 1998, I was a sergeant, and we had a call for some individuals that were packed up on somebody's property and wouldn't come off. And I say off because they were backed up in their driveway, and these people said, "We don't know who they are, and we need him moved." And so 2 officers responded, and when they got there, the person was uncooperative, and they requested a supervisor. So I responded myself, and just to give you a layout, this person was backed up on the property. So there was two patrol cars, one on the left, one on the right, that were facing this vehicle. Then I pulled into the center of that mix and was facing the vehicle as well. When I stepped out of my vehicle, I asked the officers what the deal was. The guy wouldn't come out. He wouldn't give an ID. He wouldn't this. He wouldn't that. They thought he was on some kind of drugs or alcohol, and was very anxious, very schizophrenic, kind of. So I decided to walk in front. My mistake. I walked in front of my vehicle, and he got mad and he floored it, and he hit me between his vehicle and my vehicle.
oh, geez,
And then he backed up and he pushed the car out of the way and took off down the road. Car had 50 miles on it, by the way. Brand new car.
oh,
Lieutenant, the first thing he says is, "How's the car?"
oh, geez,
Just on a lighter note.
yeah,
So obviously, he was caught about a mile down the road, and this individual was highly intoxicated. He did have drug and alcohol within his system, a multitude of them. He didn't want to be arrested. And I'm cutting the short story down just a little bit, but
it's okay.
he didn't want to be arrested, and he felt that calling the supervisor was the last straw. So when I showed up and he saw the stripes on my sleeve, it was like, screw this, and this is what I'm going to do. So we charged him with attempted murder of a police officer and felony eluding and driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs and a slew of other, infractions, including driving on a suspended license. And I tell you all these because it plays into his sentencing. Um, just a slew of other charges within him. I obviously had injuries to my knees and I had injuries to the side of my hip and everything because we have the push bumpers that you see on the front of a police car. Those are solid steel. They're there for a different reason other than some body.
Yeah.
So obviously, um, what he did was create an environment for me. The injuries, I mean, I don't know how long I'm going to go into that battle, but the injuries basically ended up developing rheumatoid arthritis, a severe case of rheumatoid arthritis. That was a very aggressive form. It's called polyarthritis.
Mm.
So, although after about 6 months, I kind of went back to light duty in working at a desk, the rheumatoid arthritis started creeping up on me to such a point that I was unable to really perform as a police officer the way I need to perform as a police officer. And
Yeah.
when I put in my retirement papers to the Fire Police and Pension Association, there's a process that you have to go through. And you have to go see, you have to get reports from your doctors, and then you have to go see 4 of their doctors from the state. And then those 4 people give their summarization of what they feel to the 5th doctor. And that 5th
Wow.
doctor would then evaluate the other 4, and then they would all come to a consensus as to whether or not you get to retire with a disability or whether or not you have to go back to work. So that's where it was like it was yesterday, even though it was that long ago. It still affects me to a point.
Yeah.
Sitting at the end of this table where picture there's 8 people on each side and person at the far end of this big oak table, and they're all looking at the papers and they're all looking at the papers, and then they all pass their little thing up to what they mark, and then you see the guy at the end of the table say, "We find based upon this, these
Yeah.
doctors say that all 5 of these doctors agree that you will be in a wheelchair within the next year and that you will be in that for the rest of your life. And we are granting you a disability,
Wow.
retirement." And it was, again, as I said earlier, it still affects me to this day.
Yeah.
It kind of was a shell shock. It's something that obviously I was somewhat expecting, but we all never get faced with a diagnosis by 5 different doctors that say you're going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And that you'll be in that wheelchair in about a year and you won't get out of it. And how am I going to take care of my family? How am I going to be the father I need to be? How am I going to be?
I'm so sorry that you went through that moment. I can't even imagine. Um, there you are, you're going back to that 15-year-old aspiring to be the superhero like mentalities going in and helping, and you've done so much. And I mean, you just your career alone in helping thousands and thousands of people, whether they knew it or they didn't, do a 180 on their life.
Yeah.
And, it's a thankless job, but it's one that you woke up every day enjoying to go do, and then it's ripped away in a moment.
It was hard. It was hard.
So your wife was there,
Yes.
in that moment, uh, the aftermath of realizing now I've got to redefine myself somehow, some way, the fight, the perseverance in you that you've always had. Um, how did that start to kind of form, and what support
Um,
did you have in that moment?
I will say that took a little while. My wife and I were pretty much silent all the way home.
Yeah.
I had to make the phone call to the lieutenant and tell him what the verdict was. I I say verdict, but it really was a decision.
Mm.
But the verdict was you just changed our lives forever, and kind of a situation. So I have to put a little humor in it to say, well, That
Yeah.
was the verdict. But, for the most part, I was quiet. I sat at home for quite some time, um, in shock. I was angry. I was depressed. I was resentful. We still had a trial to go through with this individual, uh, to make sure that he got put away in jail, which they plea bargained down to first degree assault on a police officer and felony eluding and driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol, instead of attempted murder of a police officer. So he got 12 years for that, and then a couple of years on top of that for some of the traffic violations. Um, but to me, I felt that wasn't enough because basically you just took my life away as a father,
Yeah.
my life away as a husband, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I sat around watching TV. I sat around watching television shows and movies and, feeling sorry for myself for a while. The disease did creep up on me pretty quickly, and I started losing my ability to walk like they projected, and started having knee problems and started having hip problems. Same areas where I got hit. And I was put into a wheelchair um, for some time. And so my idea and my opportunity didn't present itself until after I sat around on my butt in this wheelchair for 4 years and wondering what I was going to do and how I was going to change my life and because I was a cop. I mean, I went to college to be a cop. I've got two associate degrees in criminal justice, one for investigations and one for just regular for criminal justice. I thought this was what my intention was. I had people that I work with, people that were under me that have gone on to be captain, lieutenants, captains, commanders, assistant chiefs, and sheriffs. And I watched them going up the line, and I'm going, what happened to me? So it took me a while to be able to really get my wake up moment, believe it or not. And if I cry, you can't tell anybody.
I might cry with you.
My wake up moment was, look, my family, I have a wife and I have two wonderful, absolutely wonderful, intelligent, beautiful young daughters that have stood with me, stood beside me. I have a brother-in-law and a sister that stood beside me, and colleagues from my Blue family, stand beside me and pushed me when I needed pushed, pulled me when I needed pulled, stood beside me and walked with me when I needed the help. My wife had no issues, none whatsoever, having to push me into the bathroom without being too graphic and put me on the toilet. And I went from a sergeant with a team of 13 guys, and men and women, to my wife having to put me on the toilet. So I was at an all-time low, in my opinion. I was, again, fighting depression, fighting anger, fighting resentment. I couldn't let it go every time that my wife had to get me dressed, every time my wife had to comb my hair, every time my wife had to put me on the toilet or take me off the toilet. It was difficult for me to really start to see a light until I need to say this first. My daughters and my wife and my sister, my brother-in-law, and the rest of my Blue family, my extended family, never once treated me like I had a disability.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay.
Amen
Never once. Like I said, somebody was always there to push me up or to pull me forward or to walk with me side by side. Okay. Always between them. But my oldest daughter, Caitlin, was getting married. And I said, as a good father, I said, okay, let's talk about this. We're planning a wedding. They want to get married in Vegas. She got a great job in Vegas to work a show there. So I said, she wants to get married in Vegas. I said, okay. So we're planning this. And I said, we're going to pay for this. We're going to do this. But what do you want for a wedding present?
Mm.
And she, without hesitation, she leaned down and I can't really show, but she put a hand on each one of the arms of my chair. She looked me square in the eye and she said, I want you to walk me down the aisle.
Wow.
And I know you can do it.
Mm.
So that was the match that lit the fire under my butt
Mm.
to kind of stop feeling sorry for myself, stop being angry, stop being depressed, stop being resentful that everybody moved up around me and I didn't get to go there, stop being resentful that I have friends of mine that I helped become chief of police that were my partner
Yeah,
previously. And say there's bigger things in life. And although life can change in an instant, we have a choice in what we do with it.
that's right.
So I made that choice and we moved here to Arizona and I found doctors that didn't tell me that I'd be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life.
Mm.
We found a wonderful individual by the name of Dr. Berghoff, and we love this man, along with Dr. Sheldon Martin. Dr. Berghoff, we went to see him as a family, and he examined me and started examining me, and then we took X-rays and everything else. He said, "What do you want to do? What's your goal?" And I said, "I want to walk that young lady down the aisle."
Mm.
He goes, "Are you willing to work?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you willing to not give up?" I said, "Yes." He said, "We can do this."
Let's go.
So
Wow.
he operated on my first knee, which gave me enough to look forward to walking her down the aisle. I'll get to that in a second. I I dug deep down inside myself and remember that we as cops have the same motto as so many other first responders: never say die,
Mm.
never give up, adapt and overcome. And I'd forgotten that while I sat there feeling sorry for myself. I forgot that while my wife had to put me on the toilet. I forgot that when I needed help buttoning my shirt or combing my hair. I forgot that when my youngest daughter had to push me around a victory lap for my sister beating cancer. She pushed me around in a wheelchair so I could be there without hesitation. And I finished my rehab in 6 weeks instead of 16.
Wow.
And we went to Vegas and I was still needing assistance, obviously, for because both everything was shot, both knees, hip, foot. Uh, I walked my daughter down the aisle,
Oh man, that is so amazing.
and that's there.
Wow. Michael,
Of
gee, of
all her photographs, other than of her and her husband at the altar, that's her favorite photograph
course.
from there. So
Wow. What a
she came up, yeah, she came up to me afterwards and she said, "I knew you could do it. So what are you going to do next?"
mm,
So I haven't looked back, and I decided to go back to college and university, and my second love, as I've always, as a kid, just my escape was movies. Especially
mm,
growing up in a dysfunctional family, my escape was movies and TV. Get lost at the movie theater, get lost in a movie, which gave me, something that I didn't have to be in the environment that I was in.
mm,
So I thought, hey, I'm going to go learn how to make film, and I'm going to learn it the best way I can. And I learned a little bit about creative arts and healing, and I learned about holistic approach. So I, in turn, changed that to my outlook because I still had a long journey to go.
mm,
And I took a more holistic and naturopathic approach to healing myself. I had more operations in between, but at 51 years old, I led my graduating class with a master's degree. I led the class.
Wow.
It's across, and onto the area to be graduated. Yeah, I am. I do have a master's degree. Can't think of the word. uh, so, I got to lead them down. They picked me to lead them down. So I've had 8 operations total, and I walk 2 to 3 miles a day now, and I don't look back. But
That's
while I was
so,
in university, I did a thesis. My thesis was my capstone thesis. I created a documentary film, a short one, called One More Thing Before You Go. And we used creative arts, the dance, music, drama, and art. And we picked stories where somebody didn't get to say what they wanted to say or do what they wanted to do before losing somebody before they walked out the door.
mm,
And the theme was life can change in an instant. It changed for me. I mean, you've had a multitude of individuals that have gone through so much more difficulty than I have in adapting and overcoming on your program. But we all
ooh,
have a journey.
mm,
We all have a journey. And I felt that the best way to express you two have an opportunity to adapt and overcome. The opportunity to see the light at the end of the tunnel was to create an environment for people to heal through the creative arts. So we had these 4 stories, and one was dance. Somebody got to have the last dance. It was music. Somebody got to listen or play the last song that they ever heard with somebody or didn't get to hear, or their favorite song. Art to draw it out, drama to act it out, and it was called One More Thing Before You Go. So
wow.
afterwards, I wanted to continue. When I got out, I wanted to continue, and my health took a downturn. And if I'm talking too much, you can just kick me and stop me for a second.
No, first of all, before you start getting into that mode, um, I want to, you, we as people, we define ourselves early in life on what we're supposed to be. And we go through a job, whatever that is. And sometimes that job ends, whether you're an athlete, law enforcement, military, a teacher, whatever that is. Sometimes it abruptly ends and puts us into this downward spiral of who am I supposed to be now? How do I redefine my own success?
Yeah,
And you go through this depressive state, right? Well, in your situation, I don't think anybody would ever, or anybody that's listening to this right now is going to say, well, of course he, it's not a surprise that he sat and watched TV for 4 years because you were on the go every single day. You were managing other officers. You were doing what you wanted to do. It's what you lived for in that moment. You thought that was your own definition of success, but it really wasn't. Your own definition of success was the perseverance and resilience that you installed in yourself and how you were raised and the coping skills that you learned going through the dysfunction, the seeing of hope come into your house, that there is a greater good out there. There's something that is better, that way beyond both of us combined or anyone that I would ever talk about. And when you all of a sudden now your daughter leans down and says, I want you to walk. Man, like that's the Rocky moment, right? Where you literally just probably in your mind lifted yourself up and said, I'm over this. Okay. I'm up for whatever, throw whatever curveballs you have at me. Hit me as hard as you can because you're not going to break me. And they didn't. And you literally walked down that aisle, which is, I mean, it gives me goosebumps. This is so uplifting to anybody that has been knocked down in their life to hear this testimony of strength and resilience and just the fortitude of not giving up, man. I mean, and then from that moment, you got a taste of it. Now you're redefining who you are as a person in the world, but you're not redefining yourself because you just rediscovered it, right? It was always there. You were always that person, that fighter, the person that wanted to do good and explore life and live life in a happy way. And You went and got a master's degree in learning film, and I can't wait to hear more. So I'm so uplifted by your story. It's oh my gosh, man, that is so amazing.
Well,
Congratulations on how far you've come.
thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate that. Thank you.
really.
It's been with the help of many, many people in regard to, as I
Yeah,
said before, those individuals that were here that walked with me. And that's a message I'm going to give to everybody out there that's walking the same path or working through the same obstacles or path, is that you just need to look around you and see who's there, because there will be there people there that can push you from behind, pull you from the front, walk beside you, encourage you, be with you, and to help you move forward through whatever you need to come through. You just have to open your eyes and accept it, and understand that, as you said, there is something bigger, and there's something bigger involved with all of us, and that you just let them in.
a
Just
hundred percent.
just let them
Yeah,
in. That's all I
yeah.
got to do. Because it took
You
me
have
a
to
long time to do
listen,
it.
right? You have to listen. You have to if you know that there's somebody there sharing a relatable feeling that
Yeah,
maybe you were able to overcome, and you know what they're going through, that walk. I'm speaking to somebody right now that went through a similar situation that I went through from 2017, and they're really struggling. And I understand that feeling. I understand the walk that they're going to have to go through. So I feel obligated to be there for that person because they don't know, right? It's nobody's written a book. They didn't write a book on how you could stand back up and walk tall for yourself. Again, you had to redefine that,
I did.
and you did that through people being at your side. That's so awesome. Wow.
Well, well, you the same way. I mean, what you've accomplished is like an amazing opportunity for you to make people's lives positive. So it is, it's interesting because I had to re-recognize that again when I graduated, and I was wanting to do the other full documentary, and my health took a downturn. Went from 160 pounds to like 100 pounds in a very short
Wow.
period of time. Went to every doctor that you can imagine in regard to trying to figure it out. Finally, an um, oncologist, uh, he's also a blood doctor. Phlebotomist? No. Anyway, he's an oncologist, and he said he figured it out. He says the drugs that they have you on for your rheumatoid, and he said it put you into rheumatoid cachexia. So once again, I was faced with I have a choice. And so my message to anybody that's here, my message is that even though if you do get knocked back down again, you just have to reach deep back down inside yourself and remember that you have the ability and the strength to move forward again. Because I
Right.
again had an obstacle put into my pathway to be able to achieve what I thought was going to be my second career, and it put me on a different path to where I'm at today. And I was able to get that under control, was able to put my weight back on, be able to get off of the medications completely, and then move forward. And then my oldest daughter, again, have to thank her, Caitlin, wonderful individual, introduced me to podcasting. And she gave me a list of stuff. She said, I think you'd be good at this. And you could still carry on one more thing before you go. And you could do it through a podcast. So I sat there and listened to podcast after podcast after podcast. And I said, yeah, I think I can do this. And I thought, as a police officer, as a law enforcement officer, I've watched many people die. I delivered messages to individuals whose family members had died and those that walked out the door. They never got to say what they wanted to say before they left.
Mm.
I love you. I miss you. I'm proud of you. I've held the hand of individuals that passed away asking me to deliver a message to someone that they didn't say something as they walked out the door. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, or I love you, or any one of those things. So she said, adapt one more thing before you go your documentary into a podcast. And that's where one more thing before you go podcast was born. And at that time, I started realizing, and we're like any of us that start a podcast out here, any of us that start a new endeavor, especially a creative one.
Mhm.
The first couple of weeks, I got 5 downloads. I thought maybe this isn't it, but eventually it grew and it continued to build. And I continued to get some amazing people on my show that shared some amazing journeys like yours, amazing journeys that have come from triumph over tragedy and how to overcome obstacles and to take what they have gone through to turn it into something positive, and the methodologies they used, and it empowered me
Mm.
in such a way that I thought, I think I've taken the skills I learned as a cop that I thought I would never use again. My interviewing techniques, my interrogating techniques. It's easy, Todd. Sit down, empty your pockets. Tell me, where were you on Monday? I still have that.
Yeah.
I just have it in a different way.
Yeah.
And I was able to kind of rejoin society in a manner that allowed me to have a voice and give a voice to others, like your podcast, give a voice to others. And I went, now I found my true purpose.
Yeah.
Because as a cop, as a police officer, I loved what I was doing. I got a card from a felon that I arrested that said, Sarge, thank you very much for treating me like a person instead of a felon. You changed my life. I did some good things. I was work Secret Service detail on two presidents that visited Colorado Springs. It was great. I loved what I did, but I took everything from there and I was able to put it into this, redefine my purpose, and have conversations with people all over the world
Yeah.
that I never would have had as a police officer. I've impacted people, and this isn't a brag. This is my recognition that I've been able to impact people all over the world. And I never would have been able to do that as a police officer on the street.
You're
So,
wearing a different badge now.
yes, that's a nice way to put that.
You're
So
wearing a different badge.
I redefined my purpose twice, three times in life, actually. I had my main purpose, what I thought was my purpose. I was put on a different path. And then I thought, okay, this is my purpose. And then I'd open my eyes and go, wow, even at 50, I'm going to give my part of my age away, 55, 55 year, let me see, 55, 60, 50, well, wait a minute, 59 years old. At 59 years old, I could still redefine my purpose.
Yeah.
And in redefining my purpose, I can't tell you how much I love my job now.
It's so awesome. You could
You know,
see
from
it. I know the listeners are listening. You have to be able to see this man's face, this smile right now. Like it's so awesome. It's so uplifting, Michael, just to hear the story of positivity, trauma, strength, being knocked down so many times. But we all have it inside us to lift ourselves back up, right? It's a choice.
yes,
And
choice.
it's not easy. No matter what you do, we're not sugarcoating this. This is not going to be an easy road for you to stand back up, but you can do this. And
Good.
there's through your coping skills and what you've been able to learn and train with throughout your life is going to give you an opportunity at some point where that door is going to open like it did for you on the podcasting side of things. And I don't think that's the end all be all in what you're doing. The uplift that you're going to be able to provide, the guidance, the stories, the survival guides that you have probably provided, not only to the listeners on my show, but hundreds and thousands of listeners across the globe and people that have come in contact with you, the survival guide that people will turn back and go, man, that guy's legs were crushed, his hip. He was knocked on his ass for 4 years and he walked his daughter down the aisle. And he's walking 2 miles a day every day now. If Michael can do it, then so can I. And I'm done. I'm going to stand up or I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to see what other holistic medications or anything else I can get my hands onto. I'm going to do the hard work because he did it. You're a beacon of light. That's what you are. And every other person that goes through that perseverance, we have to keep going towards those lights, right? And learn how those people were able to stand back up for themselves and find that smile that you just had on your face. So it's so cool, man.
So amazing, amazing words. Thank you very much for those. They humble me.
Yeah.
And if I can add to everyone that's listening and watching, what Todd said is absolutely 100%. You have a choice. And, even if they tell you, I had 5 doctors tell me I would be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I had to learn to walk again 4 times. Each one. I have complete knee replacements, complete hip replacement. I have 2 shoulder replacements, complete shoulder replacements, not just a rotator cuff or something else. I have, I'm like the bionic man, actually.
You're like Robo Man. Yeah.
Yeah, I could be like a cyborg or
Yeah.
RoboCop or something.
Yeah.
It is the your you have to reach deep down inside you. Everyone, if you just said, I can confirm what you just said. You have to recognize and reach deep down inside you that you have a choice to make in this life as to whether or not you choose to move forward, or you choose to sit back and feel sorry for yourself, or to be depressed, or to be angry, or to don't feel that you can't move forward in a way that is going to help you achieve or overcome. You have the opportunity to achieve anything in your life that you want to achieve. You have the opportunity to change and redefine your purpose and find the purpose that fits you 100% and that you are happy with and that makes you feel good, that lights you up from the inside out.
Right.
And you can do it at any age. You could do it at any profession. You could do it any way that you want to do it.
Yeah. Amen, man. That's so amazing. So I know we're going to start wrapping up here, Michael. Uh, is there anything, I know, animal advocate, where's that come from?
Well, when I became a vegan, basically I moved into a vegan lifestyle.
Yeah.
Probably 18 years now,
Hmm.
somewhere thereabouts. I found that I had more empathy and compassion for animals in regard to especially the way they're treated. And watching, I mean, I grew up in a farm environment at one point in my life in a foster care thing. I actually was on a farm, milked cows, fed the pigs, fed the chickens, rode horses, all that good stuff. Um, the way that they're treated, I just felt that I like to stand up for animal rights in regard to that. Same thing with puppy mills and cat mills and so forth. So it allowed me a broader perspective or vision in regard to treating. We're all part of this planet. We're all part of the universe. We're all connected in one way or the other. And I think we should all have respect, including to animals. My
Yeah.
dog is part of my family. It's not just
Hmm.
our dog. It's part. Charlie's part of our family.
That's right.
So yeah,
Yeah. Now you got to have those. Pretty cool. So, how do people find you? I know number one, I want everybody to go out and subscribe to One More Thing Before You Go. And you got 400 episodes, so I got a long way to go and and trying to binge listen and watch yours. But uh, yeah, can you give everyone an opportunity to just find you a little bit more? Are you on social media, LinkedIn? Do you have a website?
I do. Website is beforeyougopodcast.com. Is one word, beforeyougopodcast.com. You don't even have to do www. You can find me on social media, Instagram, X. Always keeps wanting to say Twitter.
Yep. Yep.
Instagram is at Before You Go Podcast. Same thing with Twitter, X. I'm on Facebook. Same thing. One More Thing Before You Go. Look for One More Thing Before You Go. You can find me there. And I'm on LinkedIn under Michael Herst. I'm always messed up with the LinkedIn thing. You can find me under Michael Herst, and you'll see it
Yeah.
there. And we have post episodes daily on there. And you'll find a website that's again at beforeyougopodcast.com. And yeah, I look forward to you guys joining the conversation.
Well, I can't wait to be on your podcast. And this was so uplifting and amazing. You're an amazing human being. I really honestly wasn't prepared for this. I mean, as we were talking, and we'll call it like the green room, right? Prior to the show, I was literally discovering who you were as an individual, and I didn't quite understand the depth that you had in terms of your strength and resilience in your story. And it just goes to show you that everybody has a story, right? Everybody has a story. They're not all as knocked down, drag out, fight, sad, depressing, uplifting as like what you have. But to our own individualism, sometimes that can feel that way, right? Sometimes it can feel whatever that little incident maybe is, that you feel like you got hit by a car, or you feel like you were in a mass shooting, or you feel like you were part of this journey with all these other stories you hear, but really go get help, right? That's the whole message. Talk to people, help people where you can, and don't ever give up on yourself. Don't ever give up on yourself. There's always a moment where you get to say yes, and I'm going to go back in. So thank you, sir, for being on this show. This was such an uplifting podcast.
Thank you very much for having me on this show. I really appreciate you and what you do.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank Ace Branding for sponsoring this episode of I'm Going In. Ace Branding is a digital PR firm that specializes in helping thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and businesses enhance their online reputation through press features, podcast tours, and TV appearances. Thank you, Thomas and Todd and the staff over at Ace Branding, for believing in our show and sharing this story of strength and resilience.